Well, hey guys, welcome back to the cabin. It's a beautiful October day. Current temperature is about 55 degrees. And I'm just lighting up the outdoor fire here. I'm going to cook outside tonight. It's so beautiful out, why not? Tonight on for tonight's menu, we have pork tenderloin seasoned with Cabela's roasted garlic and beer seasoning, my favorite for pork. And we have some apple wood. We're going to cook it over. So I was watching YouTube the other day, and I forget the channel, but I was watching a video, and this lady was talking about building her cabin and what she had done right and what she had wished she had done different. So it's kind of interesting. I was like, yeah. So it got me thinking about what I did right and if there was anything that I wish I had have done different when I built my off-grid cabin. So while this fire is getting hot, I thought I'd just do a quick video and go through the things that I think I did right and see if there's anything, that I wish maybe I did different. Okay, so the first thing that I think I did right is location. Location, right? So it took me a while, but I finally found the right place. It's hard to find a real decent piece of property. There were two things that I was looking for. Gravel and wood. I wanted gravel. I knew I was going to need gravel for construction, for roads and so on. And I knew I was going to need wood because I wanted to build my own cabin. And obviously I wanted to be able to provide firewood for myself and all that good stuff. So very important to find the right piece of property. And I think I did that. I did that right. I took my time and found the right piece. Because this place has both. It has gravel and it has lots of mature timber. Second thing that I think I did right was I built the cabin facing, well, technically it's south-southeast, which is great because the sun comes up in the east. The front of the cabin gets the sun all morning long. My solar panels are on the porch roof and it charges up my batteries. And then as the sun comes around to the west, I've got some nice big shade trees, nice big oaks that keep the cabin cool in those hot summer days. So I built it the right direction. The third thing I did right, and I think was really smart, was I took my time and I built a proper foundation underneath of the cabin. Now I've had some different comments in the past on some of my videos, and I don't care how somebody else builds it. I had one guy say, well, I could have done that with a skill saw and a post hole digger. Okay, well, go ahead. That's fine. I mean, do your cabin your own way. But for me, I definitely wanted to make sure that the foundation was done right. And I didn't want any problems, down the road with the cabin. I've been in enough cabins where, in the spring of the year, it's all over the place and frost heaves it around. You can't open the doors. If you open the doors, you can't close them. Windows crack, walls crack. It's a big job to jack them up and level them every year. I didn't want to do that. So what I did, and I think I did right, I dug out, after I stumped this, I used an old tractor that I had. I had an old tractor with a backhoe on it, which I missed, but I needed to sell it for some cash. But anyways, I used that tractor to dig out the entire foundation. Now I'm kind of lucky because there's only 4 foot of soil and then you hit the solid rock ledge. So I dug down 4 feet. I dug out the entire thing. There were some big rocks in there too, some big boulders. I threw all the rocks and stuff back in, and then I got gravel. Actually, a buddy of mine has a gravel truck, so he hauled 10 loads of gravel up for me from the gravel pit. And he even brought his excavator up, which I didn't expect. I was prepared to do this the hard way, but he brought his excavator out and he actually leveled off everything for me real nice and graded it. And boy, it saved me a lot of time. I really appreciate that help. Man, it means a lot. Anyways, it made short work of it. But the important thing is that I did the foundation correctly. Then I tamped it all down so it's solid. Now I can only say that the test of time, 6 years so far, and this cabin has not moved a fraction of an inch. I've never had to touch it. It's never moved. So it's solid. It's on solid footing, and that's really important. This cabin is actually on blocks. So here's a shot underneath of the cabin. You can see the blocking. I have 8x8 beams that run the length of the cabin, and I have some, I just used some old tin roofing that I had. I used it for skirting. It just keeps the wind from blowing under, but it's still able to get air under it to keep it dry. I also, as you'll notice, I put 1-inch chicken wire the entire perimeter around the cabin, and that's to keep out the varmints so that the raccoons and squirrels and groundhogs and whatever else is out here, they don't get underneath of the cabin to try to make a home. Anyways, also you'll notice the entire perimeter of the cabin is graded off, so the water runs away from the cabin. Very important. And with that solid gravel and rock foundation, it's always dry underneath. That's also important because that helps keep the it's important to keep underneath your cabin dry, so you won't have any rot. And same on this side, it's all graded off, and then there's even a little ditch here to run the water away. So the other thing I think I did right was the construction. The floor is made out of full-sized 2x8s set at 12 inches OC, which is overkill. And the reason I did that was because I had a few left over, so I said I may as well use them. There's no point in having them hanging around because they'd just be in the road. I also had a leftover 8x8 beam, so I put that right across the center as the center floor joist. So that floor is solid. You could park a tank on that floor and wouldn't hurt it a bit. One question I usually get is your floor insulated? And another one is your floors cold? The answer is no and no. I thought about insulating that floor, but then I decided nah. And so what it is, it's those 2x8 floor joists, and then I got 3/4 inch plywood on top of that, 2 layers of poly, and then I have the 1-inch pine boards. And the floors are never cold. Once you put a fire on in there, it doesn't take long to warm it up. The floorboards, that pine just seems to absorb the heat, so the floor is never cold. Even in the coldest temperatures, the floor is never cold. And believe me, it does get cold out here in the winter a few times. Temperatures out here in the wintertime generally, man, they can get down to 20 below zero easy. And there's a few times of the year it gets down to 30 below. And then there's the odd time where you have some really nasty wind chills and it's way down, at 40 below. And that is cold. And it's never been cold inside of that cabin. As a matter of fact, I have to be careful because sometimes it gets too warm in there. You don't need much of a fire on. Which brings me to my next thing that I'm glad I did. It's 6-inch walls. 6-inch walls are the best thing to use. It's R20 insulation, and that's what keeps it so warm in there in the wintertime. And it keeps it cool in there in the summertime. Because here in the summertime, it can get up to 100. It gets real hot and it gets real humid. And the few times a year that I do have to turn on the AC, I plug in the generator and I crank the air conditioner, and it's like a meat locker in there in about 2 hours. So and it stays cool. Once I get it cooled off, it stays cool, and that's because it's the insulation. the last thing that I would talk about is the roof. Now, as you can see, it's a standard gable roof. It's a 5/12 pitch, and of course, it's a 12-foot span. And that's probably the one thing that I think if I could go back, I would do it differently. Not that there's anything wrong with it structurally, because that 5/12 pitch on a 12-foot span, I mean, there's no amount of snow or ice that could fall on that would ever hurt it. So structurally, it's sound. But there's not a lot of overhead room. I did build a little place above the sleeping section for storage. But if I could go back, I would build a barn-style roof, and that would give me a lot more overhead room. And then I would have been able to build a small loft and have a second sleeping quarters up there, along with a lot more storage. Because whenever I do get the guests come out, there's really not a lot of room to sleep. You either got to crawl in with me, or you got to roll out the couch and put some air mattresses down on the floor and that type of thing. So it's a little crowded, but other than that, yeah, that's the one thing that I wish I had have done differently. I wish I had to put a barn-style roof on it. But no, well, it's fine. It suits me. Another question I get sometimes is how big is the cabin? I already mentioned it's 12 by 24. I think I mentioned that, didn't I? Anyways, if I didn't, it's 12 by 24, which is fine. I don't have any regrets about a 12 by 24 cabin. Oftentimes, I think about Dick Proenneke, and I hope everybody knows who Dick Proenneke was. Oh man, he was a legend, and he's the original YouTuber before there was even a YouTube. So if you don't know, in 1968, at the age of 53, Dick Proenneke headed out to Twin Lakes, Alaska, built himself a little log cabin, and stayed there for the next 30 years. So far out of the footage that he did, there's been 3 films released. The first one is Alone in the Wilderness, and it's a classic. If you have not watched Alone in the Wilderness by Dick Proenneke, you are missing out. Find that movie, get it, watch it, you're going to love it. But one thing about Dick Proenneke's cabin is his cabin was only 11 by 15. Think about that, 11 by 15. That's not very big. Sometimes I'll measure that out and I'll go, wow, I don't know if I could stay in a cabin quite that small. I'm quite happy with 12 by 24. And I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video, the YouTube channel that I was watching that I can't remember the name of. One of the things that this lady regretted was she built her cabin too small. It was only 10 foot wide. Now 10 feet, that's not very wide. I think that's a little too narrow. So I can see where that would probably, she would probably regret doing that. But man, I think about Dick Proenneke spending those winters in that cabin, 11 by 15. Man, wow. Anyways, what a guy. I mean, it's amazing what he did. His life was amazing. And I wonder how many people he inspired. So as a side note, you know, Dick Proenneke inspired me. He inspired me to build this cabin. He inspired me to be out here. And, you know, I mean, yeah, I bet he inspired a lot of other people too. So if you haven't watched his films, do so. Start with Alone in the Wilderness, and it is just amazing. Anyways, that's it. That's the main things that I think I did right. And the one thing that I kind of wish that maybe I should have done a little differently. Oh well. Anyways, another thing before we get to the food, sometimes people ask me about the inside of the cabin, and I did a video a while back, interior renovations, because when I first did it, I was getting late in the year, and I did just kind of, I didn't really finish the inside. So I came back last year. I got back to it finally, and I finally did the inside of the cabin. So I am going to put a link in the description below. Check that video out. It's the interior renovations of the cabin. You get a good look inside. Anyways, let's get the food on the fire. I'm getting hungry. Oh man, that smells good. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's video. So those are the things that I think I did right, and the one thing I wish I kind of had it done different, but oh well, it's all good. Anyways, if you're new, subscribe, and don't forget to check out some of my other videos. Check out the video about the interior renovations of the cabin. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to see inside the cabin. And hey, go through my videos, and there might be some other videos you're interested in. Check them out, and leave me some comments below. I love the comments. Keep them coming, guys. Until then, till next time, I should say, we'll see you back here at the cabin.